Liverpool are on the verge of greatness. Arsenal are through to the semi-finals of the Champions League. Villa feel rejuvenated. Marcus Rashford's career might be back on track. Who knows what's coming up next in this wonderful wild ride in the Premier League? But one thing is for certain, Manchester United are still a joke. Even though they just got through late last night in the Europa, they are still a joke and we can all laugh at them. But we're here to talk about the teams that are on the up, the other team that's been down, and we're going to start off talking about the wonderful Liverpool and the news that's coming out of Anfield and Virgil Van Dijk's contract. I'm joined by Markus, and we're going to have fun here today. So Mark, I want to start off with that news that broke this week of Virgil Van Dijk's new contract. How do you feel when you read that headline and how it's going to pan out for the next couple of seasons?
Yeah, no, look, good to be back, good to be here, and I'm very excited to be able to record this podcast with you. Yeah, look, I was delighted. It didn't come as a massive surprise. I think, we kind of knew that, it was just the building blocks falling into place once Salah signed his contract, that Van Dijk would be next. And yeah, absolutely delighted. I think, it means that we don't have to go out into the market necessarily and look for a new centre-back with as much urgency as we maybe would have had to before with the unknowns around his contract. But with the kind of left back and right back situation as is, they're going to need to be prioritized first. And I think it would have been, maybe even a step too far to have to, rebuild the entire defense in one window. So, look, it's good that our captain and our solid leader at centre back is staying. I think 2-year contract, him and Salah will be in the same situation again in 2 years, but maybe in 2 years' time we won't be in the same situation where it feels as urgent as it did this summer with Trent, obviously a contract situation as is, and with them being 2 years older and 2 years kind of further advanced in their career, it gives us time to prepare the future and lay the foundations in which you could maybe claim the club hadn't done so well leading up into this window. So yeah, delighted he signed, excited for what's ahead, and very happy to have that pen to paper for him and for Salah.
Yeah, I think there are both major decisions that need to come. And I know there was a lot of, from the start of the season, there was a lot of uncertainty what was going to happen. I think Virgil was very clear himself and he was very open in saying that there no talks had started even by the end of August, going to September, which was quite bizarre. Same for Mo Salah. He hadn't heard anything either from the club. And it just felt like the kind of complaints around the ownership group were starting to bear fruit in, these are three of your key players and you're not even started making inroads with them. I'm not sure what happened with Trent in terms of the conversations and whether Madrid got to him early or anything, but it just feels like it's glad they were able to get 2 of the 3 done. And that's really important for the club. It's important for the players as well that you want to bring in. And obviously we've heard, and we'll talk about some potential rumours of who could come in the summer and how you might look to build again for the next season and what you do. But just looking at in terms of Trent and what you might do from a squad perspective, obviously Conor Bradley looked really sharp, really well when he's played in his place, and some fans were almost happy for him to play even when Trent was fit. Obviously right now they're both out injured, but how key will he be, and do you think he's got enough to step up and be the number 1 right back next season, or do you think you'll have to pick another player up in the transfer window? And if so, who would you look to target?
Yeah, look, I think the thing about the Trent situation is that a lot of Liverpool fans are looking at their situation without being very clear on some of their own biases, because Trent's been an incredible servant to the club and has won everything with us and is clearly at the point in his career where he's looking for something different. He wants to go to Madrid. He wants to play in Spain. He wants to live a different lifestyle. He wants to be neighbours with Jude Bellingham. And, he wants to be in that spot where he's playing for what he would consider, I guess, the biggest team in the world. I think a lot of Liverpool fans are taking that quite personally. And understandably, he's a local boy and we love our local boys more than we do anybody else. But I think for Trent, I've accepted that this is the direction that he wants to go and that he deserves a good farewell and a good departure, and the service that he's given to Liverpool, and he's won everything with us under Klopp, and he's well worthy of a new opportunity. And the reality is it will add add a taint to his Liverpool legacy, because he could have stayed, he could have been captain, he could have taken Liverpool to all the glory, but he decided he has a different path in mind, and that will mean he won't sit in the same categories as Steven Gerrard and Jamie Carragher and those who stayed with the club for their careers and sit at the pinnacle of Liverpool's legendary iconic status. But nonetheless, hopefully when we play Madrid in Europe next year, we can give him a hard time and make sure that Madrid don't win anything, and like we did for the likes of Coutinho and things like that, try to make it a hard time for them at the club that they've chose to move on to. But for me, I've made peace with that months ago. It felt inevitable that was the direction it was going. I'd always said when it went into the final years of their contracts, Trent would leave, Salah would stay, Van Dijk would stay, and here we are now, and that has proven to be the reality of the situation. As for Connor Bradley, I think Connor Bradley is a terrific player. Terrific youngster. I think he's still got a lot of development to do. I would not want him to be Liverpool's only right back. But at the same time, I think his emergence means that Liverpool don't have to go out and buy, the world class right back who's already the finished product. Liverpool could probably bring in another young right back. There's the right back at Ajax. I can't remember his name, but
Hato.
Yes, and then there's there's a right back at Strasbourg as well called Doué, who has also been linked with the club. So there's the likes of them younger ones that you could have two competing young fullbacks and go down that path, and maybe not have to spend big cash. Other names linked that would fit the bill on a maybe slightly first choice level would be Frimpong. From Leverkusen. He could come in and kind of do a job as probably a starting fullback, and then Bradley would have to compete for his place. But I feel today like the loss of Trent isn't necessarily going to be as big an impact as maybe it would have been 2 years ago. Our formation is a lot less reliant on fullbacks as it was a couple of years ago, and I actually think all in all, the departure may not be as painful for us on the pitch as we maybe thought it would be.
I think that's the benefit of having a new manager who's evolved your way of playing. And I think what I was even speaking about this with Craig as well. I think what's most impressive for me with Arne Slot is the fact that you haven't really changed the squad much from last season. You've not actually brought in. Well, Chiesa's the only player that's actually come into the team. You've got the goalkeeper Marv Dashvili who's going to join in the summer, but effectively it's the same squad as Jurgen Klopp. In fact, we were looking up like the midfield three, your key performers this season: Gramovich, McAllister, and Szoboszlai, and all three came in the same window in 2023. Which is, in fact, all four of your midfielders, including Endo, all joined in the same summer window, some in June, few in July, which is very impressive. And I think that's one thing I think. If we would say that you got a nice parting gift from Jurgen outside of the contract stuff and the Trent stuff, I think that was probably a nice thing that he's been able to leave you with a solid midfield core that is effectively in his image of football, because all of them can press, all of them can pass, all of them can give you rock and roll moments of their shooting. And you've got three players who would have seen Gravenberch as a sit-in six.
Yeah,
but also can flip to box. Who would have seen Szoboszlai being someone who we've always known he was technically secure, he could have these great long shots, but being able to dominate games, pressing up and down, moving the ball around. And then McAllister, who I think people misprofile him from his Brighton days, and they don't really know what he is as a midfielder, but you watch him for the national team for like Argentina, you watch him for Liverpool, and you've got a player that can do everything in midfield. He can break up play, he can start the play, he can finish the play. And it's just the fact that you've got three players that effectively can all do the same roles to differing degrees, but they can all do the same roles together. And what it means is your central midfield is very, very strong and dynamic. And so that's one great thing that he's done. And we're on that note, I think looking at the rest of the squad to build into next season, obviously keeping Van Dijk, keeping Salah is very important. But looking at those two positions, obviously up front and your centre back, how would you look to bolster the squad and almost have like a succession plan in place for when you look to eventually move on from Salah and Van Dijk? Who are players you think, okay, we could look at these two or these three to bring in as potential options to help build the squad going forward?
Yeah, good question. I think looking at that midfield that you talked about there, it reminds me actually a lot of our midfield back in 2018 when we had Wijnaldum, Henderson, and Milner. None of them were spectacular, but they all kind of could do everything to, as you said, varying degrees. And I think that is one of the things in which I appreciate about this midfield is that, like I said, who would have seen Gravenberch as a number 6? And you've got to credit Arne Slot for that, because he's gone. He's gone. We went out and tried to get a number 6 in the summer. Zubimendi wasn't able to make it happen. Couldn't get it across the line. Everybody knew Liverpool was screaming out, wanted the number 6, and he's gone. Right, this is what I've got. What can I work with what I've got to get the best out of my players? Who of my squad fits that profile best? And something Klopp wasn't able to identify, something I don't think Gravenberch necessarily identified, and he has set that spot alive. He's been like a young Fabinho in that spot this year, breaking up the play, winning the ball back, dynamic, aggressive, and probably. We'll talk about it a bit later, but probably outside of of the obvious, our performer of the season, and then in terms of a striker, look, we need an out and out striker that can put the ball in the net consistently. Darwin Núñez is not good enough for Liverpool Football Club, unfortunately, and I think that's been reflected in the he has moments, he scores wonderful goals, but he works hard, and nothing against the guy at all. He just doesn't fit the bill as good enough for Liverpool Football Club. He doesn't, the likes of you go back through the list of what we've had in that position: Michael Owen, Fernando Torres, Luis Suarez, even the likes of Daniel Sturridge. Like, he just doesn't do it to the levels that them guys did consistently enough to be able to be the number the number 9 at our football club. So I think this summer it's essential Liverpool go out and they buy an out forward. I think that would be necessary. Who I actually don't know. If I'm being totally honest, who I would go for in that role. Be open to hear kind of maybe some of your thoughts. And then in terms of centre backs, I think Liverpool have given themselves a year. At least that if we didn't sign a centre back this summer, we could sign a young centre back next summer, and then you'd have Konate and whoever the new young centre back was. You've got Ignacio from Sporting, who is highly rated, and would probably fit the bill quite well. There's the likes of Mark Gahey, who we've been linked with, who maybe could step up the levels. I'm not so sure whether or not I think he's good enough at this stage, but another name that's kind of thrown out there in the hat. So yeah.
I think on the striking front, I think the obvious answer would be a lack of Ishak, who everyone would want to have in their squad. Obviously, whatever happens with Newcastle this season, because they're back in the top 4 and they're pushing hard for Champions League. So if they make it, he might want to stay and keep building with what they're doing there. He might want to taste something different. So that will be a great one if you could pull it off. The other option, the other popular option, obviously, would be Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. Good striker, good finisher. The concern would be the fact that you've had one player from Portugal, hasn't quite worked out, so I want to take a risk again with another player from Portugal. So that's the other option, which might be a bit of a concern. I think in the league, there's 2 players that I would be intrigued to see how they would do. The first one is Mbeumo from Brentford. I think he's a player that's very, very underrated, and you look at his numbers and what he does. Obviously, he plays sort of from the right, but almost like a second striker from the right with a free role to get into the middle. So how he would do with being a more central striker could be interesting, especially thinking about how Salah in the spaces he wants to get into. Those 2 interchanging positions could be really fruitful next year. The other one is an option of a player that's likely to get relegated this season, and that's Liam Delap at Ipswich, who I think has taken to the league very, very well. I think Man City made a big mistake not keeping him and not giving him a pathway to their first team. But those are options, I think, maybe even both of them to come in. Liam as like an understudy, and Mbeumo to rotate in. I think that could be quite interesting to see what you do for next season. Speaking of the season, obviously, the title is the big thing that is going back to Anfield Road. barring an unexpected catastrophe and Arsenal to actually care about the league, to actually pick up points when you do have your little... Because you've had some wobbles in recent months, we have to admit.
Sure.
And it's what's been really fortunate for you is every time you've had a wobble, Arsenal have just wobbled in the league and not really cared. And on the one hand, it's frustrating, but I remember the 03-04 season with Arsenal, and I remember we were pushing on all three fronts. We had the Champions League semi-final or quarter-final against Chelsea. We were in the FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United, I believe. And we had a league game. And for some strange reason, the manager picked strong players in the Man United FA Cup game. We got knocked out. And then the second leg of the game against Chelsea at Highbury, we got done by Wayne Bridge. And if he had just decided to just sacrifice the cup, we could have left that season with a nice double of Champions League for the first time. But, you know, I feel like maybe, and this is maybe me being very generous to the manager, and I don't think it's likely, maybe he is slightly throwing the league. I do think the club threw the league from January. I think they kind of threw the season from January, to be honest, in not doing anything in the window, in not bringing in any forward. I think the efforts to get Ollie Watkins, you could say it was noble. But if you really wanted to bring him in, you could have done that deal a lot earlier. We would have got it over the line because the Al Nassr were nowhere to be seen at that point for John Duran. By the time we bid for Ollie Watkins, John Duran was already out the door. So I don't get that. And I think it was a nice PR move from the ownership. But anyway, the Arteta has figured out a way to adapt, and that's one thing I'll give him credit for. But my view with it is ultimately, you know, let's not get into Arsenal. Let's take a little second. Let's talk about the title, because I'm drifting off to Arsenal, but let's focus a bit. Title, yeah. So it's coming back to Anfield. And I think that's a real big testament to Arne Slot. I think one of the big things we've looked at across the league is injuries and squad management. And I think every club has suffered injuries. You've had injuries yourself. You've lost your goalkeeper for a period of time. Obviously, Trent's out. You've had Van Dijk out for a bit. You've been fortunate not to lose Salah for any significant time. That's been amazing. And I think his goal contribution, his form has been monumental to keeping you where you are. And that ultimately is testament to the manager. I mean, how do you feel about the fact that you're actually on the verge of winning the title? Did you think it was a possibility in pre-season? I know you said, you have said for a long time, the key to winning the league is getting a bold manager, and you did it. I mean, a lot of Arsenal fans call Arteta Lego-head, so there's hoping that maybe it's a team. I mean, it's not a toupee, but how do you feel ultimately about this season, how it's panning out?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, like, you know, and you know, we have this podcast to prove it. I was quite bullish about Arne Slot going into the window, and you know, I remember before he was even a candidate, on our podcast we did the 10 top rumored managers for the Liverpool job, and Arne Slot wasn't even on the list at that time because we did it the day after Jurgen Klopp announced he was leaving, and you know, I went through all the managers and profiled all of them and said that Arne Slot would still be the one that I would choose over all of them, bar maybe Xabi Alonso. But I didn't think Xabi Alonso was a viable candidate. It seemed like he was always going to stay with Leverkusen. So Arne Slot was the one that I thought would be the right man for the job, and obviously then Liverpool did go and approach him and ended up hiring him. And you know, I think unlike a lot of others who have followed Arne Slot's career, I just felt like there wouldn't be a massive drop off, and that Liverpool would be able to hit the ground running. We'd built a squad over a couple of years that was a good squad that had the players that were good enough to compete for the title. And you know, you forget, in a tired final Jurgen Klopp season, we only finished a handful of points off the title, in third in the end anyway. And you know, you look at that and you think, okay, well, yeah, like this Liverpool team is still title contenders. I don't know that it's going to change much, but you know, what we've had in our favor is Man City have really dropped off the ball, and as you've said about Arsenal, they've not quite been able to keep the pace of last season to kind of push on in the Premier League to the next level. And Liverpool came and hit the ground running, and you know, everybody said, Liverpool had easy fixtures to start the season, and it's true, we didn't have the hardest fixtures fixtures and he got us some momentum. But, you know, I remember there was that very pivotal week in the season where everybody said, well, look, Liverpool have Man City now and Liverpool have Real Madrid now in their next 2 games. And this will tell you everything you need to know about Liverpool and the season that they'll have. And, you know, we beat Man City comfortably and tore them apart, dominated them in the league. They didn't even get close at Anfield. And then we went and beat Real Madrid 3-0 in Europe. And it was at that point where I think everybody kind of looked and said, I actually think this Liverpool team have got what it takes to really do something special here. Now, you know, that kind of special has kind of waned in, you know, as you kind of alluded to in the months that have followed with, you know, for example, you know, the losing of the League Cup final and, you know, the little kind of shaky periods with a couple of draws there against Newcastle and loss to Forest and kind of a few kind of waning moments, as well as obviously the unfortunate PSG Champions League, which we'll get to when we review Arsenal's semi-final a little bit later. But yeah, I think you know, at the end of the day, what was an incredibly consistent season has left, you know, maybe still something to be desired, but yet, you know, the loss to Fulham at the weekend, just gone there, was our first defeat in 27 in the league. So, you know, consistently picking up the results where required. If we win every game till the end of the season, we'll still be mid-90s points. And you have to give him all the credit. It's an incredible first season, and, you know, obviously I'll be delighted once we get it across the line, whether it be this weekend or next weekend or the weekend after, to be able to take that breath and go, you know, we're champions again, not in a COVID season, level with Man United on all-time English trophies or English Premier Leagues, and be able to look forward to some celebrations before, you know, the hard work begins all over again.
I think that is going to be interesting as well for Man United fans, because they've had that over you, and that was one of the reasons why Van Persie was given number 20 when he joined from Arsenal all those years ago. It's not lost on me. It's not lost on me. Wenger in his you know, Wenger's friendliness. Oh, Ferguson, he's my friend. They're friends. You can have our star striker. Nonsense. So yeah, that will be interesting, especially going into next season. And the work they need to do, because they need a lot of work and a lot of help, to see what will happen. Because if you do pull up, you know, get number 21 and get ahead of them to total titles, then, boy, some conversation needs to be had about who is the biggest club in England. Because I think right now,
yeah,
they can hold on to it. But I mean, I feel like they're holding on to it with fingernails. It's just holding on to it. And I think for Ferguson as well, to see all of his hard work thrown away, it's such a short period of time. I wonder if here's a crazy scenario, which I don't think is likely, but if Liverpool do win the title next season, so it's back to back, and Man United end up, you know, his legacy ends up being a bit, it's not gone, but, you know, it's all of his hard work is kind of a bit affected. Could he step back in the hot seat for a season? Could Ferguson say, you know what, I'm coming back in. No, I'm in charge. I don't care, you know, about this, whatever. Amorim, thank you very much. Get out of my club. It's my team now. I'll bring the old boys back, and then let's have a go for it.
Man, I think good old Sir Alex, all the harm he did me in my childhood is well and truly finished. I don't think he'd come back anytime soon. And you know, his legacy, you know, obviously United Premier League history is cemented, and it would only do damage if he came back and finished mid-table with Man United. You know, so, you know, I think Amorim, you know, there's the hope of the Europa League still kind of hanging over them after their result last night, and that kind of kept their season alive. You know, and let's see what happens. But I think Man United are a handful of years away from me worrying about them anytime soon.
Just a quick one on them before we switch over to Arsenal and the Champions League and what that might mean and my ultimatum for the manager. I just find it fascinating that when he joined, I know they were in 10th, so the position is not really the key thing, but they were only 4 points off the top four. And right now, in any other season, they will be in a relegation battle because they're on 30, 37 or 38 points. They haven't even crossed 40 points yet, which for Man United is to
Horrific.
say it's disgraceful. I think that's not even the right word anymore. I can't even say it's laughable. It's just sad. I'm happy, but it's just sad to see because it's like how has it? And I get the idea of Amarin's. He's got his style of play. He's trying to get the players used to a new way of doing things. He's almost building for the future, working out who needs to go, who needs to stay, what they need to do. But you can't tank a season in pursuit of your philosophy and your views. And I feel like Man United are tanking this season faster than anyone could even blink or say anything, and no one's doing anything about it. It's like ownership. I don't know if ownership are putting pressure on behind the scenes, but from what I can see, it's just almost like, well, next year we'll get the players he needs in, and we've got Europe. Obviously, like I said, Europa League, they've got that going strong, and that would be a great way to end the season if they win it. But to me, I would look and I think, is it any different from Erik ten Hag? Because he won trophies. He's won trophies every season he's been at Man United. So what's the
No,
difference?
the club is poisonous at its root, and the ownership is as big of the problem as is any manager, and the players are as big a problem as any manager, and that club needs the poison dug out of its bones to be able to get anywhere moving forward. So, as a Liverpool fan, I don't need to dissect it too much. You just sit back and laugh and enjoy the poison sinking in. In my house, as you know, we have a Liverpool fan and a Man United fan, and just the fact that there's no conversation anymore, it tells you everything you need to know. It just doesn't come up. There's no desire to watch the games. There's no desire to know what's going on. I'll go, oh, Man United are losing again. Oh yeah, shocker. Didn't see that one coming. Like, it's just all hope is lost, and it's no longer even enjoyable for me as a Liverpool fan to be going, ha ha, we're better than you, because it's just like, it would be like going, ha ha, we're better than Portsmouth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's brutal. Like, that's kind of the levels we've got to with this. So no, like, I think they from a progress perspective, they really do need to pull the poison out of their bones. But look, transitioning that conversation into Arsenal, but off the back of the conversation we've had regarding Liverpool. Do you remember when Mourinho first came to Chelsea? And he, obviously he hit the ground running and they won the league in his first season. And Ferguson kind of felt like he was chasing. And I remember watching that Mourinho documentary that came out probably 10 years ago, and I've watched it 3 or 4 times. But one of the lines in that Mourinho documentary was like, he just came and hit the ground running. That he gave no other managers an excuse, because he was like, okay, well, Mr. Mourinho can come in first season and win the Premier League, so why can't you? I'm just interested on how when Liverpool inevitably get across the line here this season, whether it be this week and Arsenal lose to Ipswich and Liverpool beat Leicester, or whether it be next week and Liverpool beat Leicester and Spurs, or whether it be in 3 or 4 weeks, depending on what happens, how that conversation reflects on Mikel Arteta and the work he's done at Arsenal when Arne Slot comes to Liverpool and in his first season wins the Premier League, and Arteta is still sort of nearly 6 seasons in attempting to try to get across that line and not being able to make it happen. How that conversation reflects when it is, well, Arne Slot can come to Liverpool first season and win the Premier League. Why can't you win the Premier League with Arsenal? Man City are obviously the big question mark around that, and they've fallen off the radar this season. But I'd be interested. Maybe we can even do it in this particular podcast. But I don't think Arsenal and Liverpool squads are a million miles away. I think if you go through them player for player, I think it could be quite close. Even the top 18, I think the squads are quite similar, and that'd be an interesting conversation. So, but how do you feel about that as an Arsenal fan, and what are your thoughts when you look at Liverpool looking to win the title this year, when really it maybe feels like it should be Arsenal?
I think this season has been a damning indictment on the whole project, to put it bluntly. I like For me, I look at it in several different ways. Has Mikel Arteta done a really good job of getting Arsenal from where we were post Wenger, Unai Emery, the failures of Unai Emery, to being competitive again? Yes, but within that time period, what has been the consistent theme of issue with Arsenal? Squad utilisation has always been a problem. He has his favourite players or the players that he trusts the most, and others you either in or you're out. Like even like right now, Miles Lewis-Skelly's had an amazing season. He's kind of come from a player that you're looking at maybe getting 5 or 10 games this season to certified starter in the Champions League quarter final against the biggest club in the world, the best club in Champions League history. And yet we signed a centre back / left back in Calafiori in the summer, who I don't think starts anymore as first choice. I don't see him starting over Miles anymore. I can't justify it because for what Calafiori does really well offensively, Miles is way better defensively and is way more impressive offensively. So actually, that's a bit of a weird signing. In retrospect, at the time, it made sense. He's a very promising player. A lot of clubs wanted him, and I can see how it would give us that release valve if and when Gabriel's unavailable, which he is right now, and Calafiori is just coming back to fitness because he's suffered 2 injuries this season in strange fashion. So that hasn't really worked out so well. Up front, we've needed the striker for years, and we haven't done that business. And now this is where I give Mikel full credit because he put Merino up there in one game. Merino didn't train it much, and it's worked. Credit to the player now. He's gone out and got his own personal trainer. He's done a lot of fitness stuff. He has really adapted his own self to play the role, and he plays it differently to Havertz. The major difference in the two of them is that Havertz will give you the runs in behind all the time. He'll stretch the pitch a bit more. What Merino does, he plays the false nine. I don't want to compare them, but in the way how Firmino would come off the line a lot when Liverpool played that false line, he'd almost be like an extra midfielder in that ghost space. So the defenders wouldn't really know where to pick him up. And what I really liked for Saka's goal against Real Madrid in the Bernabeu, Merino started off on the defenders in the defenders line of vision, and when the ball came across from Odegaard, played it into Rice. Rice gave it back to Odegaard. When the ball went into Rice, Merino slowly started creeping off the defender into free space off the edge of the box. The defender thought he had him. When the ball came from Rice to Odegaard to Merino, Merino's in acres of space, in a position where he could have taken a touch and had a shot, but chose to play a really well-weighted first-time pass around the corner to Saka, which none of their team saw. And Saka was doing a great run in from the right, just ghosting in, got his goal off. But it's those little things. I was watching that game and I was so impressed by how well Merino was winning everything aerially. Yeah. Whether it be a header, a first touch. And not only that, when the ball came to feet, so secure. And that's one thing when we signed him, some fans were like, I don't really get it. Obviously he got injured in training. And then, you fast forward to his first few games, they were like, I don't see the point in the signing. What is he offering us? But for me, I'm like, you're seeing it now. Technical security is what we bought him for. And also the runs he's making as a centre forward, if you put him in midfield now and have a striker ahead of him, now you've really got something. In fact, now you can see what we tried to do with Xhaka, what the plan was with Havertz, which hasn't worked, so we've pivoted him into a striker. And now what you could see going forward if we get a top man. So that was a big issue for me, is not getting a striker in, and he's done well to adapt it. But ultimately for me, I think my view is this. We have to make the final, Champions League. If we don't make the final, he shouldn't be in a job next season. If we make the final, I think he needs to win it. And if he doesn't win it, he shouldn't be in a job next season. That's that, and that will be down to the club. For me personally, if we don't make the semi-final, the club should announce that he's not going to be there next season, and it shouldn't be up for debate. That should just be a case of, you've done as good as you can. Thank you for what you have changed the culture of this club. You have brought the winning feeling back. You have brought the fans back on side. You have done a lot. You've brought through these exciting players. We've built a great platform to go forward. Thank you, but that we have to move forward now, because as a club, we can't tolerate second place forever. Yeah. We can't. And this is the problem we had with Wenger. We went from challenging for the title, winning leagues, to accepting Champions League places. Now, obviously, you fast forward in time, and obviously Champions League is great, and for like Man United would cry for Champions League football next season. And so I understand it in the timeline and what it can help you do, but we let our standards slip. 2 years in a row chasing Man City, fine. we should have won it in one of those 2 seasons. I think last year we really shouldn't have allowed it to. We just dropped too many points at stupid times. We go on runs and we drop points in 2-3 games batches and then pick them back up again, and that's been a consistent thing from day one. So for me, it's like there's a lot of little things that has been consistent. Is he a good one-off manager in big games? Yes. Does he set our team up really well to play against the best teams? From day one, he's been figuring out a way to play against the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea. I know Chelsea, not Chelsea, but Chelsea and Man United. Traditionally, Man United as a big team. He's figured out how to do it. But we struggle against the likes of Newcastle every season. We struggle against the likes of Crystal Palace every season. We struggle against the likes of Brentford every season. There's teams that we play every year, and Brighton, that they give us problems. Fulham sometimes. It's always the same teams, that middle block teams that are trying to get to the top but not quite got enough to get there. Villa. Always those teams give us problems and he hasn't figured it out yet. So for me, he's got to win the tournament. He's got a great chance. He's got to get to the final first and he's got to win it. Now, that's saying a lot, but that's how I feel.
I think that this semi-final is as good as a final when you think of the nature of your competition. PSG are exceptional this season, and I think PSG are the team to beat. So if you can beat PSG in the semi-finals, obviously Barca or Inter will still be tremendous competition, but PSG would be the team that are expected to win this tournament. And, they have gone through their own transition from, world superstar Galactico model not working to get them what they want to, a young, aggressive, fantastic, dynamic team at the moment that are just so exciting to watch. And they'll be the competition when you look at the likes of their front three of Ousmane Dembele, Doué, and Kvaratskhelia. You look and you see you've got players who are just so dynamic, so aggressive, so fast, so tricky, so interchangeable. That front three is Dembele's finally kind of finding his feet as a player, who would probably be the star in that team, but he's not star, like he's not Messi star, he's not Mbappe star, and I think that's working for PSG. You look at the midfield of, Fabian Ruiz, João Neves and Vitinho, and you think that is an exceptional midfield, a young midfield that can pass the ball, all ranges covered, all ability covered. They've got aggressive and break up play in Fabian Ruiz, but also can hit a screamer and can take the ball forward. And then, Vitinho can sit and spray like Pirlo would have kind of sat and sprayed, but also can tuck in at right back when needed and can drop someone else into that midfield. And João Neves is probably the best young midfielder in the world right now. Just incredible, kind of has everything that you would want from a young budding midfielder, but then also them fullbacks of Hakimi and Nuno Mendes, scoring goals. They both banged in goals against Villa. Nuno Mendes scored both legs. So I think Arsenal have a real big ask to be able to beat PSG over 2 legs. I think PSG are the favourites for the tournament, but you know what? This is Arteta's time. And now is as good as any time, and all will be forgiven for no league title if you can bring home that first Champions League. But this is the moment to do it. It's the moment where you need your big players to step up.
Yeah, we do, and I love the fact that I feel like Rice has put the club on his back now and said, you know what, I've done it in Europe before at West Ham. We won our first ever, won the Conference League. Made history there. He's looking to just say, you know what, I've done it there. Let me take Arsenal to glory because why not? And I like that. And I, looking at how him and Bellingham were playing against each other the other day, you have to stop and think: are you guys? Is everything all right there? Like your national team colleagues, right? Like, because you lot are some of the little digs off the ball and little things. I'm just like, are you guys okay? Is it like, Jude, can you just calm down? Like, that's your four eyes, or do you guys have beef off the pitch? I can't tell. But either way, I liked it. It was like two warriors going head to head. It was like Declan was like, look, I'm here. I'm taking Arsenal to the final. I don't wear the armband, but I'm the captain on the pitch when I'm playing. I show you lot what I'm about. I came to this club because I want to be known up there with the likes of Gerrard and Lampard. And when it comes to the debate of midfielders in this league, of Vieira, Yaya Toure, I want to be in that list. I don't want to be known as Declan Rice. Oh, he was all right. He was decent, but we never know. No, I'm here.
Yeah.
This is my stage I've arrived. I love what I'm seeing there. Saka, even he said himself he was targeting this Real Madrid game as his comeback game from his injury. So once he saw the team progressing, he's like, okay, that's the fixture. I'm getting ready for it. And look at him now. He's come back, and it's like it's just continued on his goals and assists record as if nothing's changed.
What a player, man.
So I like that. Thomas Partey as well. I think he's done really well. And like we're going to come back to him in a second, but I think he's just stepped up as well. I think it's the first season he's not been had any injuries, barring like a minor one the other day, which is great for him, annoying for us because it's like where's this fitness been all your Arsenal career? You've been so unreliable, but yeah, when you're on it, you're great. And he's had some poor games this season, and I could tell there's been times when he's been almost saving his legs for more important matches. But hey, look, if he's delivering now, he's delivering now. I mentioned Marino earlier and what he's doing. Saliba, Raya, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jurriën Timber, just Gabriel been phenomenal, and it's just a shame he's not going to be a part of this final run for the last few games. I would have loved him to play, but Kiwior has come in and done a really good job. And my thing with Kiwior is I've always felt give him a run of games and show what he's about. Is he the best defender in the world? No. And I was even telling Craig, like, every international break, Poland kept 2 clean sheets. He played at the back. He was one of their key players. So he's not terrible. It's just that we know what his weaknesses are. If you run at him, he struggles a little bit. But with Saliba, who's almost playing Saliba's playing like 1.5 players. Because he's like, I'm doing my job, and I'm doing what Gabriel used to do at the back as well. Because he's vocal. He's like, the way how he handled Mbappe. It's like, wherever Mbappe goes, I'm going. Mbappe's attacking from the right-hand side of their side, our left, fine, I'll go over there. Mbappe's on my side, I'll go over there. Wherever Mbappe was, you saw Saliba. He wasn't far away from him. He was like, that's my job. I'm keeping you quiet. We grew up together. Your dad coached me. I don't care. You're my boy. You're in my pocket tonight. You're not getting anything. You're going to come off injured. Because you can't hack it no more. That's calm. Like, get off the pitch. This is Bernabeu. Nah, that's my garden, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really impressed with all of them, but I think we like I said, the big players have to step up. We might get Havertz back for the final if we make it. Jesus, I don't know how far behind he is, but he's also not on crutches anymore. He's also starting to do a little bit of gym work. I think he's back in Brazil right now. So I would love to have them both back and available. If I had to pick between the two, I'd rather have Jesus back for the final because Champions League is his thing. But I want them, if either of them are going to play, they have to play at least 2 league games for me before, because I don't want a rusty Havertz coming on in the final to then miss a key chance and then that's it. And all Arsenal fans crucify him. But that's going to be important. On the note of players, Thomas Partey, if it was you because you've had injury-prone players before. Obviously, Thiago, you guys let go in the summer. He wasn't able to fully get back fit. I think he's actually finally retired now as well, which is a bit of a shame. But would you give Thomas Partey another contract considering his form this season, or would you move on from him because you just don't know what you're going to get going forward?
Yeah, look, he's been good this year, but I think always you have to ask about the levels, right? Like, is where are we trying to go? What are we trying to achieve? And you have to be cutthroat in getting to where you want to get to. And look, you don't want Thomas Partey being the player that you have to rely on in the middle of the park. He's a good, versatile player. You get him on a 2-year deal, same price or whatever, same wages, but with the expectation to be a squad player because, there'll be other players that will be key players. No problem. He's a good player to have around. But in terms of your main men. I see Thomas Partey's like your Curtis Jones. You have him there. He's a good lad. He's a good player. He's good to have in the team. He'll step in where he needs to, and he'll do a solid job to cover injuries and to cover issues. But you don't want him as your main man in that midfield really at any stage. But look, the reality is, a midfield of Declan Rice, Moreno, and Odegaard is a very solid midfield if they all stay fit and they all play their role, and that dynamic works between the three of them. It is a cracking midfield. It all depends on, again, what's out there in the market as well. And whether or not there's someone out there. 'Cause, you've got a few of these players like Partey, like Jorginho, who a good squad player midfielders that are good to be there, but maybe don't quite hit the heights of where you need them, and obviously there's something missing. But I think for Arsenal this season, you can put it down to two things. At its core is Saka being out for 3 months. Saka's form, Saka's ability, Saka's game-changing levels. You'd have had an extra 5 points minimum. You'd have think maybe even more, 8 points, 10 points if Saka was fit, and then it's a different conversation in the title race. And then just no striker. No out and out finishing striker. You add Isak to the Arsenal team, they win the league. You add an out and out striker that can put the ball in the net and bag 20 goals, which we've always said was Jesus's problem. He doesn't stay fit, but he only gets 9-10 goals. He's not good enough to lead the line for a team that want to win the league. Kai Havertz similarly. Kai Havertz can, if you have Saka of this season and Martinelli of 2 years ago,
yeah,
and then you have Kai Havertz in the middle of them, that would work. Like, Kai Havertz gets you 15, he's like Firmino, right? But then you've got Saka and you've got Martinelli banging in the goals, but Martinelli's not quite being on it the same. Obviously, combination of Trossard playing in there as well, but neither of them are. They're not getting 20 goals a season. Saka obviously, fully fit would have no question, and he's been on the rise, and is absolutely fantastic, unbelievable player. So yeah, they're the two main reasons I think that Arsenal have fallen short of the league. But there's still a lot to play for between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, and we've given ourselves a great chance of having an amazing end to what has been a very frustrating season. And one thing I will give Arteta credit for is the fact that we've lost so many key players. We lost Odegaard, got into the international break for, I think it was like 3 months, 2-3 months. Saka about 2 months out, injured for almost 3 months for an injury as well. Lost Jesus. Well, didn't lose Jesus. Well, we lost Jesus at some point, but he didn't play most of the season because he just wasn't being picked. Havertz got injured in December, which is a big shame. But we lost key players at key points, and yet we've still been in touching distance of Liverpool.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we're still second is a monumental testament to Arteta's management, because Man City have been off the boil, and it's just the fact that they've. And look at what they spent in January to get themselves back in Champions League for next season. Like they have really been off it, and they really had to go for it.
Stage.
And it's not a guarantee, because Newcastle look very, very strong. Chelsea will look to push on there because they have their own questions with Maresca. Nottingham Forest deserve to be in it next season. Aston Villa have had a taste of it now, and they're going to want to push very hard to get back there. So I think there's a lot of competition for them to get into that Champions League for next year. But I'll give Arteta credit for keeping us in the top two. And finishing second 3 years in a row, in context, it's not a bad achievement. 3 seasons in a row, you're second. It shows that you've kept the team. You've not dropped the level. Now, obviously, when you look at the numbers and the data, our performances have dipped over time. And I think 22-23 was our best attacking season. Last year was our best goals, but I think that season we had our best attacks, sort of like number of chances created, how we moved the ball, where areas we were dominant. That was better. Nowadays, we're a lot more controlling, so we can win games by a 1-goal margin now. But then that's the problem. The problem is, because we're not creating as much chances as we used to, it's like that 1-goal margin. The defense needs to do its job. We can't afford to have a bad defensive day, because if we don't, we're not getting enough goals to make up for it. So that's the negative side of things for him. But Just looking at the outlook now for Champions League and how things move going forward, what does it take now for Arsenal to get it over the line and bring the hoops back to the Emirates for the first ever time in the club's history? What does it take for Arteta to effectively, in one moment, eclipse Wenger's European legacy at the club?
Well, look, the reality is keeping Saka fit between now and the end of the season is essential. You see the job he did in that Real Madrid game. He's absolutely essential to have on the field. And if that means managing his minutes during the league and screwing up my fantasy football, then do so. I'm looking to play my triple captain this weekend, and I want to use it on Saka, but I'm not convinced he's going to play both games during this period in the league. Ipswich this weekend off the back of the Madrid game. I don't know if he'll start, and then you've got Palace. But if you could guarantee me Saka's playing 70 minutes in both of them games, I'll triple captain him this weekend, and we'll go from there. But I'm just not sure he'll get the minutes. I could easily see him sat on the bench for one out of the two of them games, coming up. But I'll get your opinion on that. But in terms of getting across the line, keeping him fit, keeping him on the field, managing his minutes, and making sure that he's ready to be explosive in the big moments against PSG. And then I think a lot of the decisive factors going into the game against PSG is going to be setting up in a way in which you don't do a Pep Guardiola, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time, but maybe the greatest coach of all time. But in big moments, in big games, he tried to be too fancy. And you remember that season he went without Rodri and Fernandinho in his midfield in the Champions League final against Chelsea, and then even against Lyon there he made some changes and Lyon knocked them out of the Champions League, and just moments where you look and you go, like, what were you doing there in hindsight? Like, brave moves, like, played three at the back against, when he was at Bayern against Barcelona's front three, and Messi tore Boateng into circles and threw him on the floor with that little chip goal as well. And just moments like that where you look and you go, in hindsight, was it necessary to try to do that? Now, as Arteta's came under, Pep, I would worry that there could be some of that going into the Champions League semi-final. This is his first ever, Champions League semi-final. It's his first big moment on the big stage against a very, very good team with a chance to get across the line. Don't do something stupid. Stick with what you know. Play the team that you know. Play the way that you play, and trust that your team are going to be good enough to get across the line against PSG. If there's anything to be said about that, PSG are not going to come to the Emirates and dominate Arsenal for 90 minutes. So you will have your moments, and it's like every single time when Liverpool have played Man City in this last 5 years, Liverpool have their moments, Man City have their moments. Who capitalizes most on their moments, I think, will determine that. So that's PSG. Look, if by some miracle or good performance or fantastic approach you get through and you're into the final, Barcelona and Inter offer two very different things and are both relatively threatening in and of their own. Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, Lewandowski is a quite a brilliant front three, and Lamine Yamal has obviously came into his own since the international tournament for Spain there, and has kind of came onto the scene, and Rafinha's been exceptional this year. So Barcelona will offer a very attacking threat to Arsenal if they come up against Barcelona, and there'll be the tingles of the reminder of the Arsenal Barca final of times gone before. But Inter are also a very good prospect in and of themselves. Simeone and Inzaghi's got them very, very routine defensively, and they've got a very, very strong outfit, and they were moments away from beating Man City in the final when Man City won their first Champions League, and Simeone and Inzaghi, for Inter Milan to take them to, for example, even to take them to one Champions League final, another Champions League semi-final, they're not the Inter that you expect to be on the big stage of the Final Four of major European competitions. And Simeone Inzaghi has done a fantastic job of taking them to that major stage again. And I wouldn't I wouldn't rule them out, but that's what's needed from Arteta, in my opinion. He needs to keep a level head. He needs not to make any strange decisions. He needs to utilize his best players in the big moments, and then hopefully Arsenal come out on top.
Yeah, that's going to be important, and that's like how you put it. So obviously the undercurrent of '06 is it's not forgotten and not lost on any of us. And I think the fact that we've had a season we've gone to the Bernabeu, Martinelli and Saka, it can combine managed to do parts of Henry's celebration, which is very funny to see. There's a picture and it's just been posted of Saka did the shish and Martinelli did the arm spread of Henry. I mean, for me, looking at Martinelli this season, I'm just glad that he's picked it up now that we're nearing the end. Because we've got a new director of football. We know how much Arsenal want Nico Williams. We know how much there's been talks this, talks that, rumours this, rumours that. Without fail, a winger is joining this summer. So he knows his position is under threat. Either way, for me, he'll be on the bench next season. Or he might get sold. But if he can keep these performances up, then the bench is not a bad place to be. Because off the bench, if you can become that 10, 15 goal player off the bench, great. Then the following year, we can think about bringing you back in as a starter. But I'm just glad that he's starting to do the things that, and I think one of the things that off the field, he got engaged as well recently. So maybe all of these things coming together at the right moment. He's just a lot more settled. He's a more calmer. He does do a lot of defensive work for the team. And sometimes I feel like he just stay too wide and doesn't isolate his defender enough. But something's clicked in these last few matches where, you're looking at him thinking, oh, you can beat a man again. And someone even jokingly said, oh, he remembers he's Brazilian. But I'm happy for him that it's starting to come, because this is a guy that I really like. I like what he can do when he's direct. I missed that 22-23 season player. And in fact, in Monday's podcast, I did say that he needs to channel that spirit in this semi-final, and he did by getting the winning goal to finish it all off and give us that win at the Bernabeu and keep our perfect record against Real Madrid intact. They've never beaten us.
You need that competition. The reality is Martinelli could still play 20 games, 25 games, 30 games, whether it be off the bench, whether it be starting, whether it be rotating back and forward. Look at Liverpool and their same position, the left wing position. It's exactly the same with Luis Diaz and Gakpo. Diaz started the season explosively, had 9 goals in 6 games or 7 games, and Gakpo couldn't get back into the squad after what was a really good international tournament. And then Gakpo got in and Gakpo started to perform, and they have between them played on rotation, but have stepped up where Liverpool need them across this season. Gakpo scored in big moments. Diaz has scored in big moments. And you've been able to utilize both of them in that position. And that is what you need. You got 2 very, very, very top level players in that position. I don't think any of them are at, Salah's level or Saka's level, for example. But the reality is having 2 players that are, just short of world-class level, maybe we could say, performing, in the way that they're both performing, gives you that edge to get across the line, because when one's not working, the other one can come on. When one needs a rest, the other one can start. And, as long as one doesn't feel like he's been left out too much over the other, and you get that balance well, which again, you got to credit Arne Slot for. You've not heard any talk of Diaz complaining. You've not heard any talk of Gakpo complaining, but both of them have been virtually rotated back and forward in games as the season's gone along, to get the best out of them for the club. So, I think if Arsenal did bring in a Nico Williams, who, as a Bilbao fan, obviously is an exceptional player, and, won't leave cheap. But, at the end of the day, I think he's got a release clause. So, I think it's a matter of whether or not Arsenal decided to trigger it, and then whether he wanted to go there or whether Barcelona was on the cards still. Depending on how Bilbao do, that still they could be in the Champions League by the end of this year with the 2 routes, the league and the Europa League. So, yeah, I think that's what you need. You need that competition.
No, I agree, and I think that's one thing that we hoped was going to come through. I guess with Trossard, but his numbers doesn't really match some of the hype. So he's been okay, but not that great. Sterling in particular is the one that we really hoped was going to come in and just take the burden off everybody, but it's just been a disappointment, and that's all I have to say about that. I think some of it is down to the manager not using him. But when he has played, it's just like what it just breaks my heart. I really like Raheem Sterling. Off the pitch, he's been phenomenal at Arsenal. How he's helping younger guys, how he's been giving advice to Lewis Skelly, to Wanyeri, to the other academy players, how he's been around at training. Great. On the pitch, we move on. But anyway, look at the rest of the league. Which team have you been most impressed with this season?
I think Forest have been obviously exceptional, and they started the season well, and obviously like, Nuno has done a great job there. But no, I don't think anybody thought that Forest would be, even competing for top four still at this stage in the season. And it shows what having an out and out striker who can put the ball in the net can do for a team. Like, Chris Wood has really came to his own this season and just bang, 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 banging in the goals, leading the line as a proper number 9. Alanga, really, really good. Morgan Gibbs-White, your old boy there, like stepping up and playing some good football as well this season. And then, the thing that you got to give Forest is they identified their problems last season and they solved them. They were like, we were conceding a lot from set pieces. So they went and bought a really tall goalkeeper and they went and bought a really tall centre-back. And, Sells, obviously they bought the other goalkeeper too, but Sells has kind of made himself the main man there. And then also... Milinkovic has been fantastic at centre back for them this season alongside Morello. So they to me have probably been the most impressive team to watch from a surprise kind of outfit this season, I would say.
And who would you say has been the worst?
It's a battle between Man United and Tottenham, isn't it? Like, the United have obviously been a shambles, and we've already talked about that. The club's poison. We don't really need to go into that in any more detail. Spurs obviously have been horrendous in the league, and again, Europa League is their saving grace, and it's almost like Postecoglou knows it as well when he came out in his press conference after winning last night and said, "You're stuck with me a little bit longer." Like, he literally knows the only reason I'm still at this club here now is this. Tottenham are a shambles, but what this shows is that because Tottenham are not a necessarily poisonously ran club, but what this shows is the vast majority of the gap between 4th and 16th. If you really don't get it together and move in the right direction. Like, the clubs above Tottenham are not better clubs. They don't have better players. Maybe some of them are better run. Maybe some of them are better managers. But Postecoglou has shown he's not good enough to take Tottenham to the levels that they want to go to. And, Tottenham, even the reality is if they're competing for top 4 is a really good achievement. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do next season, because whatever the case, I think they could win the Europa League. I don't think Postecoglou stays at Tottenham next season. I think it would be a nice parting gift to finally give Tottenham a trophy if they do win the Europa League, which I don't think they will. But I'm a little biased because Bilbao is still in the Europa League. So, but yeah, obviously Pochettino has came out and talked about how he would love to be back at Tottenham, and obviously what he did at Tottenham was quite impressive, all things considered, not winning anything. But there's also the likes of Glasner, who I think is an interesting name, who's been tossed into the ring for that job as well. But yeah, so they're your 2 worst teams, and obviously you just have to say the relegation teams have been horrendous. Southampton obviously could still have the worst ever Premier League season, which it doesn't get much worse than that. I don't think Derby ever thought that would be a possibility. And as you've said, the likes of West Ham, Man United, Tottenham can all count themselves incredibly fortunate that every Premier League, every newly promoted team has been absolute garbage this year.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for them, and it's a shame for the bottom 3 that they weren't able to adapt as well. I think Ipswich was the best of the worst. And it's just a shame that with Ipswich, I think they just had a bad middle point in the season when they just were not quite picking up the points. And by the time they've gotten into the rhythm of things where they are now, it's just too little too late. Yeah. But yeah, I think we'll call it there. Thanks so much for your time, Mark. Thanks for sharing. It's always good having you on the podcast and talking. And, there's a lot to look forward to. Liverpool and Arsenal could both be victorious this season. So could Man United, but ultimately, who cares about them, really? This is us signing out from Kick for Glory.
Peace.